Well, hey there, my friends. How's it going today? It's Carpo here. Today I'm going to talk about plants and herbs. Well, herbs are plants, but you know what I'm talking about. We live in a very confusing age where pharmaceuticals have somewhat replaced a lot of these traditional medicines that we used to have. And in the process, they've come to ridicule many of these herbal remedies, which many of the concoctions, but there's a reason why we call things snake oil, and there's a lot of placebo involved in many of these ancient customs and traditional medicine. However, there's also a lot of placebo involved in pharmaceutical industry. So this is kind of my disclaimer. First off, nothing is here to diagnose, prevent, or cure any disease, as everyone always has to say. And second of all, I am not here to promote anything, and I'm not here to bash pharma either. Because as I start off by saying that the pharmaceutical industry has convinced people that Kratom is evil, that cannabis is evil, that pretty much anything in the herbal category that, I was about to say that replaces a drug, but really I should say anything in an herbal category that a drug was created to replace, they will try to demean and put down the natural source. For example, aspirin, one of the most well-known medicines for over 100 years. It's extracted from willow bark. You can take various plant barks, and they contain, I think it's salicylic acid, which is basically what aspirin's made from. Now, what I'm going to say good about pharmaceuticals is that they've helped people through some amazing heart conditions, blood issues, seizures, all different types of medicines, whether they're extracted from natural botanicals or not. Most of them, I would say, from what I've looked at, well over half of the pharmaceuticals out there are based on some natural compound, which makes sense because you don't just come up with a random compound and say, I wonder if this heals cancer. No, you're looking for things that have promise or cultures where they have less of an issue where they live, and then you say, I wonder what it is they eat or they take, and you say, aha, they take this specific herb. So pharmaceuticals have their place, but in day-to-day use, I think that they're overprescribed, especially anxiolytics, which are for anxiety, and antidepressants, which also have their place for some people, because whenever I say something bad about antidepressants, someone says they changed their life, and I say that's fantastic as long as a person's able to stop taking them at some point. What we're looking at is substances that if we are going to take them for the rest of our lives, that at least they aren't harming us or making us think differently than we ordinarily would, like benzodiazepines do. Taking Valium or Klonopin or Xanax, regularly every day will change who you are, changes your personality. It flattens your emotions and makes you think in a different way, at least in my experience and those I've talked to. So I wanted to go over the plants that I take on my daily ritual because I've had so many people ask me. Because, I'm not the kind of person who takes a lot of different herbs. As one who has always promoted herbs and has an herb business, I don't even take that many myself. And in the past, I've experimented with a whole variety of different ones. But I'm going to go through my basic morning ritual, which always has to start with coffee. Now, I had a little bag of coffee over here somewhere. I guess I don't know where I put it, but I don't need to show you a little bag with granules of coffee in it to make my point. But I thought to do justice to the caffeine world, I should at least say, okay, I drink coffee in the morning. I drink a cup of coffee. I used to smoke tobacco, but I no longer do that. I smoked for 25 years, and I was fortunate enough to be able to quit for 5 years, but I still do vape. And that's helped me to not smoke, and maybe one day I'll quit. Sometimes I do drink tea instead of coffee, but that's pretty rare. But when I do, I've actually kind of enjoyed teas like this. This is guayusa, which is from South America. And they're whole leaves that are folded in half and dried. I got those from my vendor. It's an interesting flavor, and the thing I like about tea is that it has L-theanine in it, which L-theanine helps to moderate the caffeine intake, and that's why tea doesn't give you the jitters like coffee does. So not too long after I take my Kratom each day, or after I drink my coffee, I take my Kratom each day. Kratom is a godsend to me. It's helped me through anxious times, through depressed times. It's helped me to just through unmotivated times, and especially through my sciatic pain. When for years, sometimes I couldn't even stand up. It was some of the worst pain ever. And I thought, especially when my kids were young, I thought maybe I'll never recover, never be able to lift my own children again. And it was just devastating and depressing. So all at once, if I can knock out the pain and at the same time not have depressed feelings, that's a phenomenal thing. That's when I had to quit my job in carpentry, kind of move past that. But Kratom, I can't say enough about it. I discovered it in 2009, I think, or 10, and so it's been 10 years, and it's the one thing I can say about it is, and this is important with all herbs, is to moderate and don't take more than you think you need. People talk about taking more and more. People say, oh, I'm taking an ounce or 2 ounces or 3 ounces a day. I'm like, you are wasting it. I never take more than 5 to 6 grams at a time, and that's tops. And I try to never take it more than 2 to 3 times a day. It's very difficult sometimes when you're in pain, so people might take more. And that's the thing about all herbs. It's all about your choice and what works. My next herb that is my favorite would be, I guess, cannabis, and I definitely cannot say enough about Mary Jane. Mary Jane has been with me for about 30 years now, and I have built a fond connection to the plant itself, but also the terpenes, the smells, the whole experience kind of brought me into the herbal kingdom. I said there are hundreds of different smells and flavors and profiles, and I thought each one of these has different effects. And so this is what's led me through my when I'm experimenting with herbs, to realize that different strains of a certain plant will have different effects for different people. And since we all have different body chemistry, that makes it even more complicated to find what works. And with natural products, it's hard to find something that is consistent, because the market in the natural world doesn't allow for consistency. Weather patterns change, harvests change, everything is always different. Each harvest of Kratom is different. So pretty much that's it right there. I mean, for my daily things, the caffeine, my Kratom and my herb. But I also have a few of these other these capsules that I have taken over the years on and off. Like these ones are called I call them What the Flu, and those have basically all the plants and herbs I've researched that can help with overcoming or preventing illness or improving the immune system. But you can never make claims about those things. But I take those during a season when I might be liable to get sick. And they're also based kind of on this one that I had years ago. And I used to actually sell these on my site. That was a long time ago. And I would have to buy all the ingredients. But these are called the Athea Cognition Blend. And this was my first nootropic or nootropic, however you want to pronounce it. And it has lion's mane and Bacopa, L-theanine, L-tyrosine, Ashwagandha extract. I think there was rhodiola extract. A whole variety of brain-enhancing herbs without using anything like the paracetam or some of these other, or paracetam is maybe how it's pronounced, but I didn't want to use any of the white powders other than, like, say, L-tyrosine. But anyhow, I do take these, but I don't take them all the time, and that's the thing about all these. I have a separate L-tyrosine blend. It's, I put them in capsules myself. You can buy the bag of powder and put it in yourself, and it's really easy to make your own capsules. And then I have this one, it's called the Peony Blend. I made that like a few years ago. That's a sealed bottle I've just had forever, but I had it in my stack of bottles, and I thought about it. It had Mang Da and cordyceps and guarana and ginger root. And some of these combinations are amazing, and that's really what I wanted to touch on before I go here. Some of the combinations of herbs that you can find, you have to be able to hunt them out yourself. Like, people talk about taking turmeric for arthritis or for a variety of other things. They found out if you take it with a 10% pepper, black pepper ground up in there, it actually has up to, from what I've heard, up to 2,000% more efficacy, which means basically 20 times more effective than taking turmeric by itself, because it makes it more bioavailable. Now, black pepper is in the piperine family, and naturally it's going to have those. Anything that's spicy might actually help to bring out other components, or whatever's happening in your stomach with the acids. We just don't know all the details with mixing all these different herbs. So we go by a lot of tradition and history. And speaking of cordyceps, and mushrooms are, if I were going to just name a few, if somebody were to say, what should I take, for something that'll just help me all around with my immunity and maybe mood and brain, mushroom blends or mushrooms. They are amazing. I mean, the promises that there's heavy promise for a lot of these mushrooms. Basically, lion's mane, chaga, red reishi, and cordyceps are all the ones that I've taken. Like, I have this bag of chaga here. It's my last one, but it's very black, as you can see. It's almost totally black. It's like a dark brown, and it tastes malty and chocolatey. You can put it right in with your coffee, cocoa. And that's supposed to help with the immune system. You have to think about what these fungi do in nature to protect themselves. And I can't get into the science here. I just wanted to talk about my favorites. But cordyceps, you may have heard of cordyceps. They're the ones that grow on the inside of an ant's body, where, I'll tell you the story quickly if you don't know. A spore floats around through the forest, lands on an ant. Once it lands on that ant, it attaches, then the spore literally explodes with like the power of a bullet for its size. Breaks the casing. Spore enters the bloodstream, reproduces, enters the ant's brain, tells the ant to climb down from its home, crawl across the forest floor, then climb up into the canopy to a branch that's about 1.5 to 2 feet above the forest floor, then to climb out onto the end of a leaf, climb around to the bottom of that leaf, grab on as hard as he can, latch on, and then he dies. It programs the ant to do this. And then as soon as the ant dies, the fungus grows out of his head, and it grows these little cordyceps things, which, poof, release spores, and the whole thing starts again. Now, this is just one type of cordyceps. I think that was militaris. There's also Cordyceps sinensis, which is harvested in Tibet by the natives up there, and they find these little things like literally this big growing out of the ground, and they pull them up, and there's a caterpillar underneath, and that's the sinensis. Well, I can smell it now because I have some right here. And for years, a couple of years I was taking it, and the place I'd buy this cordyceps from, it's grown on grain spawn. It's grown differently. The cost of cordyceps, if it were to be wild harvested, is like thousands of dollars a kilo. It would be nearly impossible to afford. So these are grown on grain spawn, but they had a limited edition cordyceps harvest that was grown on silkworm casings. Now, I don't know how well you can see that, and you probably won't be able to see it very well on camera, but as long as I sit back within the focal area. Each one of these little tips would have a little bunch of spores on it. This is the silkworm casing right here, and I think I ordered like a pack of like 10 of them or something, and it's just such a cool novelty. And they smell so amazing, because the smell of cordyceps is like super malty. But ordinarily they're not grown that way. It would be kind of inhumane and kind of wasteful to grow it on these insects. On the contrary, perhaps it's the integration with these insects' bodies which makes it as potent as it is, or we just don't know, and we're still trying to learn even the basics of one fungus or one plant. How can we possibly know how all these different plants interact with each other and within the human body, the human brain? I mean, which could be harmful long term and which aren't. There's still people that think that kratom is deadly dangerous. And for some people with certain blood types, certain brain issues, certain body issues, it might be. Just like smoking cigarettes could kill a person in a year or two of lung cancer, whereas another person could smoke his whole life and never have an issue. It's very unfair, it seems, how our bodies are so differently adjusted. So when one person says drinking milk is horrible, another person says I love it, to each his own, and what your body can handle. I'm not lactose intolerant, which is why I use that as an example, but there are so many different, let's just say you've got to try and see what works for you. It's easy to have somebody say, this is the perfect blend, and this is what you should take, because this is what I take. You just got to have trial and error. So anyway, if anyone has any specific questions pertaining to any of the herbs that I've talked about in the past that I might know anything about, I'd be glad to answer them in either a future video or in the comments section. So maybe I'll just make this kind of a Q&A at the end for anybody who made it through, and say, if you have a question about an herb, I'll do my best to answer. Naturally, I can't give dosage advice, and I can't know you or your body, but these are the things that we can't even talk about because people are so afraid to even give advice to other people because it's considered, giving a prescription or something. It's preposterous. Doctors can just give you a write you a prescription for, an antidepressant just because they're an authority and just because they're getting a kickback, even if you might not need it. And there's no repercussions. But herb companies get shut down because they're finding something that helps people. And, damn it, I'm going to fight to the end to keep as many herbs legal as I can, because I'm on the camp of all drugs, all substances, pretty much anything adults want to consume should be legal. And the only real repercussions are from poorly created laws. So, talk to y'all later. Thanks for listening. Be well and take care of each other. Ask away.